Hello, I'm Uncle Ma, or if you're watching this outside the Middle Kingdom, Matthew. I have a B. If I say this outside the world of interpreting, then people will probably look a bit baffled and say something like, lucky you, don't get stung. But interpreters who have dabbled in bi-directionality and who have ended up becoming bi-active do find themselves getting stung. So today I'd like to talk to you about the world of retour interpreting. One common misconception about interpreters is that we must all speak lots of languages very well. The tradition in the European Union institutions has been for interpreters to work from several languages that they understand very well into their mother tongue. But elsewhere in the world, the tradition has been to work both ways between two languages that you speak very well, what is known as the Soviet school. This can also be linked to political factors and others, the idea that you have to actually be from a culture to understand the source language well, and that imperfections in the target language are not so important if you compare that to the insights that you have into the source language, which is your mother tongue. So there are different approaches, different ways of looking at it, and in the European Union there has been a partial transition to retour interpreting for certain new languages following recent enlargements. How many native speakers of English or French, for instance, understand Lithuanian? It's become a practical necessity. The International Association of Conference Interpreters, AIC, has a classification system for interpreters' language combinations, which is a bit of an alphabet soup. But broadly speaking, the A language is what we would normally refer to outside the world of interpreting as being somebody's mother tongue. A B language is another language that an interpreter works into professionally, and C languages are other languages that an interpreter works from but not into. And there are various different combinations that people work in on different occasions. But having a second active language as an interpreter is not the same thing as being bilingual. You don't have to have been brought up speaking two languages to be able to do it well, although there are many interpreters who are in that situation. And there are also some people who are brought up speaking two languages but can't interpret between them. They don't have the other skills that are necessary, the agility to switch quickly from one set of forms of expression and ways of thinking to another. According to customer satisfaction surveys that have been carried out with delegates, directionality in interpreting, in other words whether the interpreter is speaking his or her mother tongue or not, is not an absolutely vital criterion in terms of the delegates' appreciation of our work. We tend to think of accent and grammar as being the major challenges when we speak foreign languages, but neither of these things is actually the main issue when it comes to retour interpreting. The main challenges tend to revolve around the use of idiom and connecting ideas in a fluent way so that the listener can follow the whole sequence of ideas without any distraction because of the fact that it is not the interpreter's mother tongue. And here we run into Donald Rumsfeld's concepts of known unknowns and unknown unknowns. The fact that there are known unknowns, we know that our foreign language is not perfect, can make us self-conscious, which in itself is more of a problem than the imperfections of our expression. And the unknown unknowns mean that just occasionally we will say something which is completely ridiculous to our listeners, and the worst thing about it is we don't know why, we don't know how it happened, and that makes us nervous, which in itself can be a problem for our interpretation. So what's the good news? Well, in theory, the good news is that you understand the source language perfectly because it's your mother tongue. I say in theory because, of course, we have to listen to our mother tongue in a new way. We can't just let it wash over us and perhaps think, oh, I wouldn't have said it like that. We have to be listening actively and analytically the same way as we do with our passive languages, sometimes using telepathy to really get at the root of what somebody is trying to say, rather than focusing on the form of how they're saying it. And other good news, if you have a retour into English, the English-speaking world is fairly multicultural, so people are used to different accents and varieties of the English language. Today we're at the Council of Europe in Strasbourg, where I'm lucky enough to be able to put a couple of questions to the head interpreter and chief of interpretation department at the Council of Europe, Ms. Sally BAILEY-RAVET. So, first question, Ms. BAILEY-RAVET, does the Council of Europe use Retour interpretation?
The Council of Europe is a bilingual organisation, English and French, so yes, we do use Retour interpreters a lot. Either double A's or AB's. There is sometimes this impression, or people who don't really know think that double A's is what you have to be a good retour, which is not the case. We have a real mix of double A's, but many AB's, and the quality of the work is exactly the same.
Could you describe for us the ideal retour interpreter for you?
What do I look for in a bilingual interpreter or an interpreter with a retour language? Basically, I look for perfect knowledge of the language, of course, but also of the culture, of the way people think in that country. Because as an interpreter, what you are mainly is a communication facilitator. So you have to be able to take one national setting and a sentence in one national setting, and then be able to transpose that sentence in a completely different national setting, even if it isn't your own. That means that the interpreter must absolutely have lived in the country of the retour language. I think it's an absolute requirement, so that you don't only know the language, but you understand the way people think, you understand the way people tick, and if people are laughing in your A language, they also have to laugh when you're interpreting in your B language. So definitely that is what I would look for. Not perfect bilingual AA interpreters, not at all. And I've actually realized that some AB interpreters can be even better than AA interpreters. So that's not what I'm looking for, but I'm looking for a perfect understanding of the way people speak, of course, of the way people think, but also of what makes them tick, so that you're getting the same reaction no matter what language you're interpreting into.
So I hope I've managed to tell you something about what it can mean to say, I have a bee, and also something about how we all sometimes get stung.